In Vermont, we can't afford to send our kids to college, neither can you. We've got environmental problems, you've got environmental problems. So let us not allow the establishment people to divide us up. Not blue state, not red state. Not whether we're black or we're white, whether we're Latino, whether we're gay or whether we are straight, whether we're Muslim. We are one people. And if we stand together, we can do enormous things, because at the end of the day, and I'll talk about this in a moment, the 1% and the oligarchs have enormous wealth and enormous power, and that is true. But while I am not a PhD in mathematics, I do know that 99% is a hell of a lot larger number than 1%. And our job is not to allow them to divide us up. Now, let me just talk a little bit about who I am, and in a sense, why I got involved in politics, why I'm here today. I grew up in Brooklyn, New York, and I grew up to a father who came to this country at the age of 17 without a nickel in his pocket, couldn't speak English, worked hard his whole life, just never made, like most people, a whole lot of money. And we lived in Brooklyn in a rent-controlled apartment. That's the kind of apartments that are available to people who don't have a lot of money. And my mother's dream was that someday we would own a home of our own. She died young, and we never achieved that dream. And when I look back on my childhood and the events that shaped my life, it's not that we didn't have enough to eat, we did. It's the kind of stress and arguments that my parents went through. I think, when you're kids and you hear your parents arguing, it tears you apart. And that's what happened in my household, and it was always about money. We don't have enough money to do this. My mom wanted to do that. We can't do this. And what I learned then and what I know now is that there are tens of millions of families in our country today who are dealing with that exact type of stress. And what our job has got to be is to understand that we are living not in a poor country. If we were living in a poor country, I would give you a certain speech. We are living in the wealthiest country in the history of the world. And there is no excuse that in this country today, 60% of Americans, probably more here in West Virginia, are living paycheck to paycheck. So let me tell you a little bit what you're not going to see on corporate media, and you're not going to hear on the floor of the Senate or the House. And that is, right now in America, we have more income and wealth inequality than we have ever had in the history of America. Today in America, if you can believe it, and it really is quite unbelievable, and I think a lot of folks don't believe it, but the truth is that you got one man, Mr. Musk, who owns more wealth than the bottom 52% of American households. You got the top 1% owning more wealth than the bottom 93%. You got CEOs of major corporations making 350 times what their workers make. There was just a piece in the paper, I think it was the Washington Post the other day, there's a big competition going on in Palm Beach, Florida, where these zillionaires are buying, this waterfront property and building homes for tens and tens of millions of dollars. So the bottom line is that the people on top today are making money hand over fist. They don't know what to do with their money. Jeff Bezos, the second wealthiest guy in the world, had a nice little wedding in Venice. And he wanted to give his new wife a nice little gift. He gave her a $5 million ring. Guy owns 14 homes. These guys are incredibly wealthy, but what is driving them and what is going to destroy this country unless we turn it around is their incredible greed. They are very religious people, and greed is their religion. They worship on the altar of money. And I got to tell you, they are not nice guys. They could care less about what they are doing to ordinary Americans. So that is one reality. People on top with enormous economic power, enormous wealth. Today in America, we have more concentration of ownership than we have ever seen. You know why prices are high? Because in sector after sector, you got 3 or 4 major corporations controlling what is produced and the prices you pay. These guys have not only enormous economic power, but what is even more dangerous is they now have incredible political power. So let me tell you what I think you already know, and that is the current campaign finance system in America is totally corrupt. So what does it mean? It means that as a result of this disastrous Citizens United Supreme Court decision, billionaires are now able to spend as much money as they want on an election. Got it? So you can run for office, but they can spend hundreds of millions of dollars against you. Elon Musk himself put in some $270 million to elect Donald Trump. Does anybody think that that is vaguely what democracy is supposed to be about? And Musk's reward, of course, was that he was given the most powerful position in government for a few months, where he exercised his right-wing extremist views through tens of thousands of federal employees off of their jobs, helped break the federal employees union, and took funding away from USAID, which keeps millions of starving and desperate people around the world alive. But what their political power is about is not just Mr. Musk and the Republican Party, it is also true in the Democratic Party. Now, I want to give you just one example, and I could give you many. In my view, Kamala Harris should have won this election. And in my view, the reason that she did not win the election is she was surrounded by a lot of moneyed people who told her not to speak out strongly on behalf of the working class of this country. But I'll give you another example, because it's not just, when you talk about money in politics, it is not just campaigns. It deals with the legislation that I vote on every day. I'll give you 2 examples. Trump's big, beautiful bill is, in my opinion, the worst and most dangerous piece of legislation passed in the modern history of this country. It is going to be a disaster for the country, and especially for working class states like West Virginia. It is going to be horrific. You are going to see tens and tens of thousands of people who are now on Medicaid lose their benefits. You are going to see many people who use the Affordable Care Act pay significantly higher rates. You're going to see kids who are hungry go without the food that they need, kids who want to get an education not being able to do that. Now, where did all of those savings go in terms of cutting Medicaid, the Affordable Care Act, nutrition, education? They went for massive tax breaks for Trump's wealthy oligarchic campaign contributors. How disgraceful. Shame is the right word. We can argue about policy, but I don't think there are too many people in America who think it is a good idea to take food from the mouths of hungry kids, take health care away from working class people, and then give those savings in tax breaks to billionaires and large corporations. But that is exactly what Trump did. And that is exactly what wealthy campaign contributors wanted. They paid for that. Now that's one thing. Let me give you another example, different issue. In my view, and I've led the effort in this direction, I think what is going on in Gaza now is absolutely horrific. What is going on now, what has gone on in the last period of time is not just the killing of 60,000 people, a majority of whom were women, children, and the elderly. Not just the wounding and injuring of 140,000 people, most of whom women, children, and the elderly. Not just the complete destruction of the infrastructure of Gaza, their schools, their universities, their healthcare systems, their water systems, their housing, not just that. And right now what is going on is the starvation of children in Gaza, the starvation. Now, I took the lead on this, and I introduced legislation that would stop funding Netanyahu's war machine. And I did that on a number of occasions. And I'm happy to tell you that we have seen a significant number, a growth in the number of Democrats who are now voting, a significant majority against funding of Netanyahu's war machine. But one of the problems, but also I want to say that we did not, in the last vote, we got 27 votes, we did not get one Republican. In my view, Republicans in West Virginia and throughout this country do not want to spend billions of dollars to fund the starvation of children in Gaza. And I would hope that Republicans stand up and tell their members of Congress there are a lot better things we could do with our money than starve children. But the point that I'm making here is that one of the reasons we have had so much opposition to stop the funding of the Israel war machine is not that people in Congress don't know what's going on. They do. But if they stand up and say, wait a minute, I don't want to starve children, on the next day you'll have super PACs like AIPAC saying, we're going to run against you and spend unlimited amounts of money. In terms of Trump's big, beautiful bill, you may recall there was a senator, Republican senator from North Carolina, Tom Tillis is his name. And Tillis made the mistake of actually reading the bill. And he saw that it would be devastating to North Carolina. He saw it. He said, you know what? I can't vote for this bill. That's what he announced. Literally the next day, the Trump world started blasting him. Billionaires were saying, we're going to spend whatever it takes to defeat you. Day later, Tillerson said, I'm out of here. I'm not running for re-election. So what you got is a campaign finance system in which the billionaires call the tunes and members of Congress follow in suit. The most important political change that we can make in this country is to overturn this disastrous Citizens United Supreme Court decision. I want people, working people, low-income people, to be able to run for office, not having to beg billionaires for money. I want an election. I want to see elections where what matters is a clash of ideas. You disagree with me? Great, come on up, run against me. Let's argue your ideas versus my ideas. That is called democracy. Let us not have what we have now, is super PACs putting zillions of dollars into these ugly 30-second TV ads. That is not democracy. But our job now, brothers and sisters, is not just to take on Trump's ugly and dangerous agenda. His agenda is not only tax breaks for the rich and cuts in programs for working people. As I'm sure everybody here knows, in a very frightening way, he is moving us toward an authoritarian society. He is usurping the powers of Congress. He is challenging the responsibilities of the courts. He is suing the media. He is trying to undermine universities and law firms throughout this country. And what I say to Mr. Trump is too many people in Vermont and West Virginia have put their lives on the line and sometimes died to defend our democracy. We're not going to let them take that away from us. Now, Trump is, his politics, his style of politics is new to America, but it is not new to the world. He is playing the same old playbook that demagogues have always used. And what is the essence of what demagogues do? What they do is they pick on minorities, often powerless minorities, and they blame those minorities for all the problems that people are experiencing. In our country, it used to be blacks, used to be gays. In Europe, it was Jews, it was gypsies. You pick your minority group, they're powerless, and then you blame them for all of the problems society is facing. Today, the targets are primarily undocumented people and the trans community. So what Trump does, and I was there, it was a remarkable thing. I don't know if any of you recall it. I do, because I was there at his State of the Union speech. This guy went on, wrote the longest State of the Union speech ever given. It was 100 minutes. He forgot to talk about the healthcare crisis, forgot to talk about the education crisis, forgot to talk about the climate crisis, forgot to talk about virtually every major issue facing the American people. But what did he talk about? He talked about undocumented people, and he lied, and he lied, and he lied. So this is what I want to say, okay? This is what demagogues always do. You got a housing problem, you got a healthcare problem, you're not making enough money, your kids can't go to college. You know whose fault it is? It's all the undocumented. And we are going to come together to hate the undocumented, and then we forget about the oligarchs and the people who have the wealth and the power. That's the oldest trick in the book. Trump didn't invent it. That's what they always do. And our job is to do exactly the opposite. Now, let me give you some examples. I get around the country a lot, and I ask people a simple question. I'm going to ask it to you right now. Does the American healthcare system work? That is exactly the response I get to every audience I talk to. So here's what you got in healthcare. You got a situation where we spend, as a nation, almost double what every other nation on earth spends. You got that? We are spending the insane amount of $14,000 a year for every man, woman, and child. When you spend that kind of money, we should have the best healthcare system in the world by far. Well, we don't. According to all of the studies, despite all the money we spend, we have one of the worst systems. And the reason for that is the function of the American healthcare system today is not to provide quality for everybody. The function is to make a whole lot of money for the insurance companies and the drug companies. So when we go forward, and I don't care whether you're a conservative Republican or a progressive, the vast majority of the American people understand that health care is a human right, not a privilege. And what I want you to understand, and what I want you to understand, and I think a lot of people around the country don't understand, this is not a radical idea. This exists in virtually every other major country on earth. I live 50 miles away from the Canadian border. You end up in a hospital in Canada for a month. You know what the bill is when you come out? Zero. They spend far less per capita than we spend. So our job together is to take on the greed of the insurance companies and the greed of the drug companies, who, by the way, charge us by far the highest prices in the world for prescription drugs. We ought to take them on and move to a Medicare for all single-payer system. And I want you all just to think for a minute what it will mean to working people all over this country to understand that when you get sick, or your mom gets sick, or your kids get sick, you don't have to worry about how you're going to pay the bill. You go to the doctor when you need to go to the doctor. And by the way, when we talk about healthcare workforce, we need to substantially increase the number of doctors we have, the number of nurses we have, the number of dentists that we have, the number of mental health counselors that we have. This is a system broken from top to bottom, only designed to make the drug companies, the insurance companies richer, and we have got to change that. And again, we can do that, in terms of healthcare, we don't even have to spend any more money because the system is so bureaucratic and wasteful that spending the same amount can cover all of our people. In terms of education, let's talk about education for a second. Education is the foundation of a vibrant democracy, and in a competitive global economy, we need the best educated workforce in the world. So what do we got today? Let's look at education in the richest country in the world, where the billionaires are doing phenomenally well. Start off, anybody here have little kids in childcare? Yeah. Okay. Cost of childcare is off the roof in Vermont, maybe $20,000, $25,000 a year. And meanwhile, the teachers, the instructors at childcare are paid starvation wages. Okay? So think about it. If we understand what every psychologist will tell you, that the ages of 0 through 4 are the most important years of human development, intellectually and emotionally, right? And if we believe, you know, all these people, they love America. Well, if you love America, you love the future of America, you love the children of America. They are our future. And we should love them and cherish them. And that means, among other things, we should not have the highest rate of childhood poverty of any major country on earth. We should not have kids going to bed hungry at night, and we should have a first-class child care system. And if you want, here's another story. When you talk about America, there was a time, decades ago, when America led the world. We were the best educated country on earth. No longer the case. We had a higher percentage of our people getting a college degree than any other country. No longer the case. Right now, if you are the son or daughter of a working class person, you got to think twice about whether you even want to go to college. Because you got to come out $50,000, $100,000 in debt. You want to become a doctor in America? Guess what? You're going to come out $500,000 in debt. A nurse, $150,000 in debt. Meanwhile, we need doctors, we need nurses, we need people in the construction industry to help us rebuild our broken infrastructure and to help us move to sustainable energy. So, for the sake of the future of this country, we have got to make sure that every child in America gets the best education he or she can, regardless of their income. And once again, it is not a radical idea to say that we should make public colleges and universities tuition free. And I'm happy to say that there are some states beginning to move in that direction. What our dream is, our vision is that every kid, no matter how poor, understands that if he or she does their schoolwork well, is disciplined, studies hard, they will be able to get a college degree or go to a good trade school or whatever. So in America today, again, richest country on earth, rich doing phenomenally well, healthcare system is broken, educational system in deep trouble. What are the basic necessities that people need? Well, last I heard, most of us need a roof over our heads. We need decent housing. In America today, 800,000 of our people are homeless, and 20 million households are spending half of their limited incomes on housing. Think about that. You're spending 50% of your income on housing. How do you have money for anything else? You don't. So why in the richest country on earth are we not building millions of units of low income and affordable housing? In Trump's big, terrible bill, not only do we cut Medicaid, etc., we also put another $150 billion into the military. We now spend more than the next 10 nations below us combined on military spending. Maybe instead of building tanks and guns, maybe we should build low-income and affordable housing. And when we talk about where we are as a nation today, here is a reality that everybody understands. And that is that over the last 50 years, I want you to think back, 50 years, there's been a huge explosion in technology, right? And every worker in this room is far more productive than the person who had a similar type job 50 years ago, okay? One might think that when we are seeing increased worker productivity, workers would be making a lot more income, right? Here is the truth. And this is really quite an unbelievable reality. It's not discussed enough. But over the last 50 years, real income accounted for weekly wages for workers are actually lower today than they were 50 years ago. Can you believe that? So workers are producing much more, and yet in real inflation accounted for dollars, they're earning less. And a study came out a couple of years ago from the Rand Corporation, and it said that during that period of time, there was a $75 trillion redistribution of wealth from the bottom 90% to the top 1%. Got it? So that's what's going on. What we're seeing is workers are working long hours, they're more productive, they're going nowhere in a hurry, and meanwhile the people on top are getting all the wealth and almost all of the income. So what do we got to do about that? There are a couple of things. First of all, the good news is that all over this country, workers want to join unions. And this morning I had the honor, we were in Mingo County, and we went to the museum in Matawan. I don't know if any of you have been there. And you have a hell of a history here of union struggle in West Virginia. And what the mine workers and the others have done has had an impact on the labor movement all over this country. But right now, despite the fact that workers want to join unions, very often they can't because their companies are acting illegally in preventing them from forming a union. And that's why we've got to pass a piece of legislation introduced called the PRO Act, which would punish any corporation that acted against workers' legal right to form a union. What's the minimum